Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. It is 11:05 exactly, and this is one of my favorite times of the week. I look forward to Friday mornings at 11 a.m. to 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. I have to put that in there because we have people that join from all over, which is very exciting. So I am Dr. Nika White, your host, and I'm actually the principal of Nika White Consulting, a management consulting firm that's based in Greenville, South Carolina, but we serve clients all over the country. And we help them to integrate into their business framework strategic diversity, intentional inclusion, and a lens of equity. And so today's session, Intentional Conversations, is a virtual community chat that we've been doing for quite a number of time, a number of weeks now, actually since March, I believe. And so love holding space for this community. I feel that we all can learn with and from each other. I am being supported today by a couple of my teammates. Anna Viola Goodman is my chief of staff, and she's assisting with all of our technical, logistical issues today. And so I appreciate you, Anna. I also want to make sure that I acknowledge Natasha Poriz Kova. I think that she still is on right now. She was having some technical difficulties earlier, but she is our marketing specialist and also is very much instrumental in helping us with our session today. And so I'm going to go ahead and make sure that we share our screen. We always like to have a couple slides that we take you through. And so Anna, if you could advance to the next slide for me, please. So I do not want the conversations to end today. So I always like to make sure that I share with you that I am on social media, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I would love, love, love to be able to connect with each of you around topics of diversity, equity, and inclusion, leadership, business, or even other things that you are involved in. So please feel free to look me up on any of those social media platforms, and I will greatly enjoy the opportunity to be connected in that capacity. Next slide, Anna. Visit my website. It is nikawhite.com. And the reason that I always like to share this is because those of you who have been joining this community, you know that this is all about learning with and from each other. And there are a number of courtesy resources that are available through my website, either blogs, white papers. There are short videos that are entitled Inclusion Uncomplicated, and they're all about simplifying DEI. And so I encourage you, if you want to continue to find ways to self-educate as you grow in your ability to lead inclusively, that there are resources out there for you. And so thank you so much in advance for taking advantage of those resources that are on my website. I always like to make sure that I tell you who's coming up next for the guest co-host for Intentional Conversations. And we are very much looking forward to Friday, September the 18th. Bola Aldwina is going to be my guest co-host. And so we're going to be talking about several things. I had my prep call with her about a week ago, and very fascinating the work that she's done. And in fact, she just transitioned not too long ago from one of my favorite brands for their leadership for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that brand is Accenture. And so I look forward to talking with her and having you all to meet her. And then the week following, on September 25th, my friend Lindsay Polick is going to be my guest co-host, and we're going to be talking about the fact that we have 5 generations in the workplace right now, and they all look vastly different. She is an expert, particularly on the millennial population. And so, again, all of our conversations from week to week, they vary, and so I love to make sure that we're bringing in guests with different perspectives. And so Lindsay is going to certainly center us around the conversation of again, just multi-generations in the workplace and how to survive, right? And if you happen to know of a special guest that would make a wonderful host to have conversations with, I encourage you to send us an email. Let us know. You can send those recommendations to Anna Viola Goodman, and her email is Anna, A-N-N-A, @nikawhite.com. Anna will put her email into the chat for you, but we would love to hear your recommendations. Many of the folks that have come on have been by recommendations and referrals from each of you in this community. We always appreciate that. So now let's get to the point of why we're here today. Go ahead and flip to the next slide, Anna. I want to make sure that we just touch very briefly on a couple commitments, I guess, that we can partner on together just to ensure that our time together today is optimized and that we, again, are really learning with and from each other. So here are a couple things to keep in mind. The first is our topics from week to week. They certainly are going to vary, but what connects each week session is that we intersect conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusion, leadership, and business. We certainly are very respectful of what's top of mind for all right now as we continue to navigate the uncertainty around the racial injustice and as well as around the pandemic that continues to find its way into our lives in many different capacities. We want to make sure that this is seen as a time for exchanging dynamic knowledge that we can apply to our lives, to our respective leadership roles, as we continue to propel ourselves to the next level. And so see this as an opportunity, not just to have information, knowledge that's transferred to you, but that we want it to be something that you see as fruitful to your journey ahead as a leader. Leverage the chat room. I want to continue to remind you that in this platform, there are a couple different areas where you can chat. We want everyone to chat in the stage area. That way we will not miss any critical information that perhaps someone is sharing. So avoid posting in the event chat room. Let's use the stage area for that. And this session is being recorded. And so we will make sure that we send this afternoon to you a link for the replay, as well as some key takeaways and other resources that we'll make available to you. And you'll also have a chance to go ahead and register for next week's session. So with that in mind, I want to introduce my very special guest today. This is personal for me. This is probably more personal than any of the other sessions I've had, with the exception of when I had my husband and my daughter on as my guest. But the reason I say that is because Tim and I have been connected for quite a bit of time. His precious family and my precious family have been connected for years. And I don't know, we'll get into that later, but let me give him a formal introduction at this point in time. Tim Pecoraro is a high energy and fast paced individual with no lack of humor, vision, passion, or zeal. You'll soon see that. If you ask who he is, he will always tell you he is a leader, a communicator, and an artist. He approaches challenges by crafting unique solutions that gets results. As a speaker, trainer, and coach, Tim can ignite any group by pairing keen insight with excellent delivery, imaginative word pictures, illustrations, and methods that work. Tim's primary focus and his passion is people and their development as individuals, entrepreneurs, and teams for personal and professional growth. He believes as a business's competitive advantage resides within its people. When a company makes people development a priority, it is a real win-win for the business and the individual. That is why Tim has successfully assisted startups, small businesses, and international brands to experience successful people and business growth. For 20 plus years, Tim has coached teams and leaders in government, healthcare, manufacturing, nonprofit, real estate, construction, engineering, and entrepreneurship sectors. Utilizing tools and frameworks he developed, coupled with organizations' vision, mission, and goals, Tim creates a plan to get his clients from where they are to where they want to go. Tim has launched 3 businesses in the upstate of South Carolina that continue to provide extraordinary services to the clients they serve. He is a certified coach with the John Maxwell team under his long-term leadership hero and mentor, John Maxwell. Y'all, please, please, please welcome my special friend, my thought partner. There's so much I can say about you, Tim, but I am so grateful that you're here with me today. I'm grateful that you accepted my invite. And I've been looking forward to this moment because I want people that I am connected with that know about Nika White Consulting and our brand to know you, because I have just gained so much value from being able to pick up the phone at any day, any time and say, Tim, I just need you to help me think through this. And I always walk away feeling like, oh my gosh, I should have paid him, but he wouldn't have accepted it anyway. But anyway, I appreciate you. So thank you for being here. And I want to give you a chance to just greet our audience in whatever way that you deem appropriate.
Well, Nika, I wouldn't miss any time with you at all. So, and my heart is full for you and your family, and love you guys. So our kids, we watched them all grow up around each other. They were in school together. I used to secretly want one of my boys to be with your daughter.
Wait, you gave up on that? I don't think I have.
Didn't one of them is kind of now. I think he's found the one, but one of them just kind of started. But I mean, I'm still open because. So, anyways, good people. So I move on. Well, welcome everyone out there. You're in good hands. Anything that you're doing with Nika, I love her leadership. I love the things that she's doing. So all of you out there, I appreciate you taking the time then to really get into a position where you're hearing more and growing and learning. And so, and what I love is one of the best things that I love that Nika's doing is most people, and she's one of a few that I know that when this whole pandemic hit, she literally shifted and she pivoted. And I have my rule of four for shifting or pivoting. You have to plant, you have to eventually scan, then you have to get into this where you pilot new things and then you launch. And she did it just like that because she was clear on who she is and how she wanted to show up. She didn't know all the things she needed to do, but you have to start with why so you can get to what, and then what will lead you to how. And Nika, you did a great job with that. So those of you who are coming into this, not only is she rich and full of information, she's a product of her product. And you guys are joining into something that is real and it is truly intentional. That does make a difference. So I'm honored to be here.
Thank you, Tim. I'm so glad you're here, and thank you for your words. And so we've read your accolades. I always like to tell people, I want to give people the proper introduction. I want people to know how credible they are and what they have to look forward to. And so we've gotten that out of the way. But now I want to hear your story, what people cannot read in a bio. Tell us about Tim, his journey, and whatever it is that you want us to know that's going to help frame our conversations today.
Yeah, these are the highlights that I feel are, especially in this day and age, and what we need to be hearing. You know, I was basically told that I would either go to prison or I would die or I would never, well, they said I wouldn't graduate college. That's the only thing that didn't happen. And it's because I made some pretty bad mistakes in my life. I was welcome to leave college. So, but I grew up very mixed family, illegitimate children, don't know who's dad, and all of these types of things. It was a community of tremendous dysfunction. People just trying to do life the way that they knew to do life, and I'm just glad I have my life. That's the one thing I'm very grateful for. But a lot of brokenness in my world. People doing the best they could with what they had. People that started out in very low, less than places. But they would always say, I'm not going to give up, not going to quit. I am a person, I tell Nika all the time, I am ethnically ambiguous. I have so much I have nations in this body. I'm talking nations. So, I did those tests, Ancestry and 23andMe. And what's interesting is they match up, but you're looking at the most Egyptian, Moroccan, Nigerian. I'm talking so much West, North, and Sub-Saharan Africa, right? All right here. Then it comes from the Middle East. So I have that. Then they moved into Italy, where my mom's family, that from the Middle East, that you get that mix of, you've got Ukraine, you've got, so Russian and Ukraine, you've got also that Palestinian line coming into them. And then they settled in my natural father, who once I discovered was out of Italy, but they were never welcomed because they were different. So they weren't a part of the Italian society, but it's a Sicilian group, and then ended up in the United States and kept going with a lot of that diversity on accident. Basically, these are people that just fell in love with people and just did their thing or called it love, and more kids kept coming out. But I grew up in that situation. A lot of violence I experienced in my life in Connecticut. I was born in New London. And then you have the Hartford and New Haven, not the Yale area of New Haven, the Bristol area, all of the troubled areas, like kind of penetrating into your family dynamic as people just continue to move. No accountability, really. You kind of just figure out things as you go. And a lot of times what you figured out was those things don't work and you can't keep blaming people. But I was hard on, someone's going to have to give me an opportunity and make a way for me. And I think what happened to me, and I also experienced a lot of sexual abuse as a child. So I went through things that, really were a lot of weight on me. I didn't trust men. I didn't trust authority. And I was to the point where I was very suspect of any person. And I was a chameleon. All I did was take color from the world. I didn't know how to put my color into it. I felt like I wasn't Black enough for people, Hispanic enough for people. I wasn't Middle Eastern enough for people. And I just kept trying to find my way and create an identity instead of realizing I needed to get into who am I? Who do I want to be? And then the wake up call was when I got out of Connecticut, and there's a lot of in between there. But when I went into Connecticut, I went down into Florida. I ran into a lot of brick walls there and some concrete authority. And that was the biggest eye opener for me. Went back to Connecticut. Things were falling apart there because I was always leaving things instead of going to something, thinking if I leave, it'll get better. Well, I was a lot of the problem. So things were coming with me. Then my mom and my stepfather moved to South Carolina, came down here to South Carolina, and I finally met a man at the age of 19 years old from Missouri. Didn't look like me. I had long curly hair. So my hair was long. I was looking like a wild child. And he looked at me and said, I want to help you. I want you. He goes, I see your talent. You have so much gifting. And I thought he was trying to exploit me. I judged him immediately. But then he said, if you'll give me the opportunity, I don't want to make you into me. He said, I want you to be you, and I want to help you do it because I want to show you that you get to create a life if you want to. Let me help you. He did that. He introduced me to a group of people, of other men, and they were all different. Then they took me down to Atlanta, and that's where I met John Maxwell at the age of 22. And I literally began my journey of change from the inside and realizing that it's not about what anyone else says or what anyone else does. Yes, I can influence things around me, but the best place I need to start with is what's inside of me and what am I going to bring into this world and how am I going to set an example as a leader that understands leadership is influence and that I knew how to influence for all the negative ways. But what if I could influence in the positive? And so here's this guy that's been able to coach executives in states. I sit across from big corporation CEOs, all of those things, no college degree, but being a life learner and a person that takes responsibility for growing himself. So basically that is what I do every day. And that's kind of a nutshell of my story.
I love your story, Tim. You're getting lots of love in the chats, by the way. And hopefully you all see why I was so excited about Tim as my guest co-host. First of all, you have such a way with words, ethnically ambiguous, brick wall, concrete authority. I took note of that. I love it. Diversity on accident. And so anyway, I want us all to kind of play this game where we really take notice of how he put words together. And if something resonates with you, just repeat those words into the chat. It'll be interesting to see. But Tim, your story is remarkable, and it certainly helps to frame our conversations. And you led us to the place where I wanted to go next, because the foundation of Tim's coaching is about this notion of owning oneself. And so I want you to talk about what your approach is and really what does that mean to own oneself. And I'm sure this audience is going to get great value just to have you unpack that a little bit further.
Yeah. And I appreciate, Nika. That's a great question. And I love that one. And I love how you talk about DEI stories, right? And you don't get to hear these things from people because a lot of times we're talking about so many of the other pressures and weights, but a lot of solutions are in hearing a lot of stories from other people,
Yes.
and I love how you do that. And so thank you. So for me, what I realized was I couldn't change what everyone else was doing before me because I wasn't in existence. I couldn't change the decisions that my mom made, my natural father made, my uncles made. I couldn't affect any of those things, and I couldn't pick where I was going to come from. And there was a time where I was so busy trying to be something to fit because I was working hard to fit. And we do need more people who are willing to show up and help people find themselves, not shape them into who they want them to be, right? And live vicariously through that. Mentoring to me, I tell people it's a disguise for people to live vicariously through people, to say that's my protege, instead of saying let them become who they're going to be. Let them grow into that person. But I needed to know what it was for an owner's mind. So I didn't really own anything, right? So I was like, what if I could own myself? And that's where this gentleman, his name is Harry, he spoke that into me. He goes, Tim, if you could own you, what do you think are the parts you need to own? And so he's guided me down this path of getting an owner's mind so that my mind wasn't going internally so much, beyond introspection and reflection, but just like crushing myself with, blaming other people, not taking my own responsibility, and just squashing myself. He was like, I want you to get it to where your mind, the neuroplasticity of your mind can work and begin to create new pathways for the way you think. And so I was like, what could I own? And that's when I realized I can own my thinking. I can own my feelings. I can own my decision or decisions. I can own my actions. And that's going to help me own my outcomes, whether it goes my way or not. Because I can say, I did that. It may have been wrong, but I can own it because, listen, when people are succeeding, nothing hurts. Nothing. Right? And you don't learn in success. You don't really learn. You'll try to repeat it though. But success camouflages a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And so my thing is I want to learn from the things that I failed in so that I can really have learning. It's only failure if you don't learn. So my rule became this: own your thinking, own your feelings, own your decisions, own your actions so that you can own your outcome, regardless of what's happening around you. Is it going to be tough when people oppose? Absolutely. But you still can keep moving. And I think I told you this, Nika. I get a vision of being like water. Go ahead and try to let water flow. What happens to water when it comes up on the shore? It makes its way. It will find a way to reveal itself. It will work and work and work until it's out. And that's what I realized, that we need, as people, view ourselves more like as water. If we continue and we allow ourselves, instead of complaining about what's happened to us, we'll look at the situation that you're in and say, now what can I do, and use this, because water will find a way. And so that owner's mind is all about my thoughts, my feelings, my decisions, my actions, my outcomes. Now, not ignoring other people. I listen to people, all of those. But at the end of the day, I need to choose. So,
I'm usually not kind of speechless. And as often as we talk, Tim, I'm a little surprised that I am speechless right now. I think it's because I'm giddy that people are able to witness you the way that I have the privilege of being able to be in your inner circle and just hear from you. I mean, because it is very inspiring. And you're right, be like water, find your way. Grit and resiliency is so important, especially when we think about all that we are facing right now with what's going on in society. And it can feel so daunting, almost to the point where it paralyzes us, where we don't even want to take the first step towards trying to address it and solve for it. And so I love what you're sharing. And I love this idea of owning oneself. We can't own the actions and control other things, but when it comes to our mind, our actions, our decisions, we can own that. And that does have a big part in our outcome. So well stated. I want you to talk a little bit about the notion of owning oneself and all of those categories that you just so eloquently talked us through. But let's put it in context of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and our personal responsibility to model inclusive leadership, because part of your coaching is all about producing leaders to be at their best. And so I want to connect DEI to the work that you do around coaching people to own themselves.
Yeah, so I just came back I was in Charleston working with a client that's in the hospitality world, and they have a lot of diversity, which is great. So on the diversity side, that's great. I think their equity side, they struggle, and then being inclusive with it. So they have tremendous diversity in hospitality, but there's a struggle. So I was down there working with them. And so the three areas I gave them was condition, concern, and correction. Right. And so,
condition, concern, and correction. Somebody put that into the chat. Okay, go ahead.
So condition is this: do I understand what the problem is and where it comes from? So helping people and the only way you're going to do that is you're going to have to ask questions of the other people in the room. You're going to have to discover what's going on. And I'll show you my acronym I use in a moment. But condition is the first, right? So do I understand the problem? Not do I know what it is? Do I understand the problem? And are you getting more information from the room, not just, I see the problem and it's just this? Because here's the thing, most things are not that simplistic. You have to spend some time. As you said, Nika, you have to ask questions. And let me tell you this, if you want quality answers and responses, so we want the world to respond to a lot of things right now, let's ask better questions, because the quality of the answer is going to be determined by the quality of the question. Not just holding up a thing that says this is wrong. We need to learn, because behavior follows belief. No person will consistently behave in a way that's inconsistent with how they see themselves. So what we have to do is get into those stories and ask, where does that come from? So do you understand this problem, and where does it come from? And then that's the concern part. You got to move into this empathetic space. Do I care enough about the problem and the people that it harms. That's the concern part. So when we get people to own more, bring their attention to the concern, the condition, bring it over, have conversation around condition, move into concern. But ultimately, here's what correction looks like. And it's always going to be me first. Okay. You want change? You go first. So do I know how to correct the problem? And if so, am I willing to do something about it? And what am I going to do? So I take those and bring them into a room, and I work with the people with open-ended questions, because one person's, what they see as the condition is going to be different than this one. But remember, we need the sum total of that information. We need all of it in order to be able to come up with the strategies necessary. And it feels sacrificial, though, when you're doing that, because you can be so clear on it when you're in the room leading the thing. But can I tell you something? If I walk into the room with all the answers, so think of me as a CEO, Nika. Say I'm a CEO and you come to observe how I'm doing things. I'm sitting at the table. I come in and go, all right, company people, here's the problem, and this is what we're going to do. Now, what are your ideas? How many people in the room do you think are going to actually contribute after I've already walked in the room and told them, here's the problem and here's what we're going to do? Who's going to respond? Nobody. They're going to go, CEO has all the answers. So even though you, as a DEI practitioner, I know you are, and anyone else listening or anyone that wants to make this a part of their leadership, don't walk in the room with all the answers. Walk in the room with better questions. Start with condition, start with concern, and then start with the correction. Now, correction, not punitive stuff. Let's make sure that as we're pointing out things, that we're not making people in the room in our attempt to teach inclusion, that we're not excluding. We need to make sure that we're careful, and open that room up and really create environments and atmosphere where people feel psychologically and emotionally safe to share, knowing that there is a tremendous and a large group of people who have totally not felt emotionally and psychologically safe to share. That's our challenge.
You have amens going on into the chat, and I ditto that. Yes, and it is so timely and so relevant because condition, concern, and correction. When we think about condition, you're right. We have to get people to get close to the problem, get proximate to the issues. Because in order to correct, you have to really fully understand what the problems are. And to your point, you have to care enough to want to see the problem resolved. So that concern factor. And it's so relevant to, again, the conversations that are bubbling up in so many different regards, relevant to how do we now address all of these big social complex issues that has so many of us feeling defeated before even taking the first step. But the notion of if you want change, you go first, that really resonated with me and so many others as well. Okay, so next question. Last week, or actually not last week because we were on break last week because of the holiday, but the week prior, we had Lily Zank, who was our guest co-host, and we talked about tokenism. And in that conversation, she stated we have to see it for the lens in which we feel like we have the emotional capital to endure that process. So basically what she was saying is, do you see it as a token or do you see it as being a trailblazer? And as you and I were prepping for today, I mentioned that to you and you had a lot of energy around that as well. And specifically you said to me, Nika, I get it. Not everybody's going to have the emotional capital to be able to endure as a trailblazer. And we have to give people permission to be reflective enough to make that decision for themselves. Again, owning oneself. But you said, what I worry about is what about the people who decide that they aren't the trailblazers? How do we help them? How do we elevate them to the next level? How do we prepare them so at least while they are still just trying to maintain, not as a trailblazer, but just as survivor for themselves, how can we make sure that they are going to be able to show up at their best? And I thought, Tim, that is a great question and not a conversation that I've had often. I said, let's talk about it. So here's our chance.
Okay. Well, so people have asked me before, because, I always say be more, do more, and have more. And your reason for being, doing, and having are for you to figure out, nobody else.
Yeah.
Right. So everybody has that. I want to be, I want to do, I would like to have. but then you can add to it. And I want to give, I want to share, I want to, right? And so many people feel like they're at a deficit. And these are people that it doesn't matter who you are, really. People can run at deficits, and they can run very, very low, coming from some of the greatest setups of all time, and they can still be operating in a deficit. And that's in the well of the self and who the person is. And it's almost like there's a hole in their bucket, right? That it doesn't matter what gets filled up, it always seems to dry out, and it just drains out. So people have said to me, Tim, do you want to be the best this, best that, and all this? I say, no, my goal is to be world class. And so I want you to think about the Olympics right now. Okay, so I view you, Nika, you're a champion. Okay, you're a gold medal, silver and bronze winner. I mean, I feel like if I'm in the race with you, I'm like, she got me by 10/100ths of a second. You know.
And I feel if I'm in a race with you, it's all about, oh my gosh, I gotta level up.
But you get what I'm saying. And so here's the thing. When you look at the Olympics and you look at, so Usain Bolt, man, legend runner, right? Oh my gosh. And then Justin Gatlin's been trying to catch him. Do you know that no one doesn't go to the Olympics and say, I'm not going to run because Mr. Bolt is running?
Right.
No, they still train because it's a world-class mentality. So what we need to do is find those that may not feel they're a super trailblazer, but they want to run the race. So how do we become people that get alongside, just like the sponsors, knowing that this person's going to run against Bolt? They're not a Bolt. They're not going to do that. But can we get them in the arena and get a world-class mentality about who they are? Can we help them increase their personal best? Everybody posts, oh, look at my exercise today, my personal best. I think that's great stuff. But let's continue to grow the human, grow that person. Help them realize they're bigger than their body. They're bigger than their experiences. They're bigger than their past. How do we invest in them? Because it's easy to go to the championship team that's always winning. It's easy to jump on the thing that the message is already created, and all we have to do is twist it a little bit, and it can work. But what about the person who's saying, I agree, I see all these things, but I'm not that one. So can you help me run the race I can run? Yeah. And I'm going to tell you, it's kind of like if I was running a church, most churches want the high charitable givers. And what they want is the people that give the most money and then keep the doors open. Well, in a lot of those cases, the churches are controlled by those people that give the most. So here's my rule. If I had a church, what if I got everybody to give something? And I showed the value of giving at every level as according to what a person had and what they chose to give. And they own their thoughts, their feelings, their actions, or their decisions and their actions for their outcome. They give according to what they've purposed. I would rather have that church because everyone's giving and no one is in a spot where, well, they give more than me. Okay, well, they have more. Don't be mad at them. Do what you've purposed and intended. I feel like there's a world of people right now, Nika, that are sitting out there saying, I'm not that trailblazer, or I'm not the prize fighter. I'm not going to go, yeah, I'll get in the ring for 12 rounds with Floyd Mayweather. No, they're the one that goes, I want to go to boot camp and I want to train and be healthy, but I'm not a prize fighter. How do we help them? There should be a space for everyone, and we need more leadership and people in this space. So anybody out there who's doing DEI and things like that, let's not just look at the upper level managerial people and all that other stuff. Let's look at the associates. Let's look at the people that at lower levels who still believe in a full life, one that's not just surviving, but it's thriving, that they can actually be more, do more, and have more as well. And they have a reason, but that's their DEI story. And we have to ask better questions so that we can find out what it is so we know how to serve them better. Boom.
Yes, boom. You brought the mic. You have threaded this together so nicely. So I want to shift a little bit. And while I shift to this next question, I do want to go ahead and alert our audience. There's lots of great stuff going on in the chat. Put your questions in there. We're going to shift and then take some questions directly that you have. And so be sure that you're continuing to use the stage area for your questions. But so I always like to bring in recent events into conversations with my guest co-host. And I'm sure you and many others on the call today are privy to the fact that just last week, the end of last week, our current administration came out with a ban on diversity training. And really it was around the critical race theory. And the ban that came out is basically requiring that federal agencies do not provide offerings of diversity training that deals with the critical race theory. And the claim was that it's divisive and anti-American. And so I'm sure that many in this community had, different, thoughts and sentiments around it. But I want to hear what's your reaction to that, Tim? What do you think?
That's a stupid decision to me, because I mean, if you think about it, and once again, I'll go back to my ethnic ambiguity, right? To where I look at that and I go, the world is changing more to be that. That's the future, anyways. I mean, diversity is going to, and then cross culture and that beautiful cross pollination that's happening all over the world, And I mean, I have Indian friends that I went to school with when I was younger, and their whole family, there was a rule they couldn't come outside their own culture. But now I see them, and they're married to someone like from South America and stuff. And there's like this release and it's changed, and I love it. But when you stop that and you don't want to teach people and educate people and help them understand, I think that's the stupidest thing in the world. To say it's un-American, that is stupid as well, because that is America. So that's the only way I can put it. Stupid decision. If I had to go down every line item with it, I'm sure there might be something that kind of makes sense. I just think it's stupid, knowing that that's I don't know what world you're in to make that statement. That's all I can say.
No, it doesn't make sense to me either, and I share in your sentiments around. I think it's just providing a distraction for some of us, and so let's not get distracted by stupidity.
Yeah, and let me just say that I love the word you said. It's distraction. And so here's the other thing. When people do stuff like that, you know what I do? I mean, I hear it, and I'm not going to go into let me fight against it. Here's what I do. Once again, I come back to, I don't have to own any of that stuff. I'm going to own what I'm going to do and what I'm going to think. Now, do I want that to change? Absolutely. Right. What can I do? Because I only have so much reach. I can only talk to so many people. I can only push so long. But what I can do is every room that I walk into, I can let people know that this is what they need to do and this is where it's at. And I hope you will engage here. And I hope you understand what I mean. Like, that's how I go to work. That's how I go to work.
Absolutely. And, to your point, we are living in a multicultural society. And so organizations do not have a growth strategy or a growth plan without having a multicultural strategy. It's just not going to happen, and so I'm totally with you.
They will lose. Trust me. If they don't, they will lose. I've gotten
a lot of calls. People are saying, so what do you think? Should we be concerned? And I'm going, that's just a distraction. I haven't given it another thought, but okay. Let's move on, because there's lots more to talk about, and I want to maximize these last, 18 minutes or so that we have. There are lots of questions that are entering into the conversation by way of chat. And so I'm going to ask my colleague, Anna, to come on stage, and maybe you can assist with the questions. There is an option that if you would like to ask your question live, you can request to come backstage and be able to do so. But in the interim, let's see what questions are out here. Lots of just affirmations is what I'm reading right now, but I know I saw some questions earlier. Okay, so one question from Pama B. Do you have examples where you were able to convince someone to change their beliefs in this process? And I'm assuming maybe this process at that time we were talking about the coaching of owning oneself. So examples where you were able to convince someone to change their beliefs.
Okay, so I want to clarify something, and I appreciate the question I was posed, and I'm not saying that you're asking it incorrectly, but I don't want you to think that my goal is to change a person's belief. What I want them to do is I work with them to discover what they believe. And then I want to see how that's serving them. And so what I do in my coaching is I work with people to identify the belief system that they have. And one of the ways I do that is not to try to hit the beliefs immediately. I start with like value. So how do you value something? Because the belief is going to be expressed through a value. That's how it's going to happen. And so I'll start at a value level, so how do you view people? And I start talking about that. But then I move into, so where does that come from for you? And I start moving my way down there. And then ultimately, by posing questions to them, that it's a person that's really wanting to have a growth mindset, though, and they want to change. They're looking for a difference in their life. That's when that person can work on that. And then on their own answering of those questions. Because here's the thing, I don't give them answers to remember. I give them problems to solve. That's why our education's so screwed up, because we're too busy giving people answers to remember. That's why I tell people I'm not a mentor. I'm a coach. I give you a problem to solve, not an answer to remember. And I think we need more of that. So when I help them with that, that's when a person starts making that change. Because when we go in and we're trying to battle belief only, we'll have a problem. So here's an example. I did this as a test to prove it. So I got with some friends that are Muslim, and I got with some friends that are Hindi, some friends that were Jewish, Christians, and then some agnostic and atheists. And what we did was we wanted to prove the difference between talking about our beliefs and what we could do with a project and our values. So what we did was we came up with a project, thought about focusing only on the value of it as it related to what it is that we were going to do. What's the value? What were we looking for? We didn't get into the belief where each person comes from. And that's our problem. We're too busy getting into say, if you believe like me, you can belong with me. And that's why we have too much friction. We need to belong people into some beliefs versus trying to get them to believe like us or see if we're alive, or you change your belief. How about this? Let's talk about the values, and then people will naturally make adjustments, because then they're going to be willing to talk about more about what you believe. And they're going to be more open and curious to it, because you're not hitting this thing where there's direct opposition immediately. So my process is a little bit different. It's not scientific for most, but I can tell you it works.
Yeah, it sounds very effective. And here's the thing, I like what you talked about with beliefs and making sure that we're thinking about this the right way, because I always tell people that acceptance doesn't always mean agreement. And I think that's where sometimes people get bogged down in terms of really trying to coexist in a society where there's so much difference, right? We start to classify difference as right, wrong, good or bad, instead of just seeing it as different. And so acceptance doesn't mean agreement. So I appreciate you bringing that up. So here's a question from Dawn Dack. She wants to know, she was listening to your story that you so graciously shared with us in the beginning, and she wants to know, how are you reaching back to impact the lives of young men who have lost their way? Great question, Dawn.
Oh my gosh. My passion is to build young men before you have to mend them.
Okay.
Yes. And my rule is, and that's what I do with businesses. So a lot of companies want to bring me in to try to correct a problem. And I say, well, let's first make sure that that's not it, because remember, you're the leader and this place probably looks like you. Okay. So a lot of the problems you have is probably coming from you, right? You've been here long enough. That's what's happening. So, and I don't say that rudely. I mean, obviously I'm saying it bluntly right now, but I'm not rude to them. But let's first make sure that you don't want me to just try to fix people. Okay. And let's be clear on something. What you do is you lead people. You manage processes, you manage systems. You don't manage people, you lead people. Okay. So when you get into that whole thing with young people and stuff like that, that's my passion. You build people. So if you build a person, they can build everything else. Help them grow. When's the last time you saw a magazine? I don't think I have one around here, but imagine you have a magazine and on the cover and it says the fastest growing people in America. Never see it. But you'll see the top company, fastest growing business, most outstanding this. No, we need more of that. So you invest in people. So I do reach back to young people who are making big mistakes, all kinds of stuff. Recently worked with a young man who was on the fast track, first year of college, fast track to jail. Like I'm talking, he was about to go to prison. I got to coach him for about 1 year. He doesn't know that college is still for him, but he's a 19-year-old, turned 20, or now he's 21. And he is running a business now where he's making $7,000 a month, and just spending time with him, helping him to get a hold of his decision making. Once again, owning his thoughts, his feelings, decisions, actions. So what I do is I do one-to-ones, I do groups. I try to coach teams with younger kids that come from broken families. I even ask for, in the sports recreation programs, I say, give me the kids that nobody wants. Give me the kids that may need a ride because they're maybe in a poverty situation. Give me the kids that have autism, where people don't want to touch them because they don't know how to deal with it. Let me have them. And I make teams that are competitive because I believe in every single child, there is a champion in them. They were born a champion and they can live like one. And I want to make them world class. That's my rule. That's what I do.
Okay. So two great questions that I see into the chat. This is from Lori Roven, our friend. So she is asking, can you speak to white privilege? And when someone is in a DEI training and speaks up with a statement or question that may feel uncomfortable to another person, how could the white person or person of color might best handle that?
Wow. I mean, I think what we need to do is we need to leave room for people to give an answer. And that's the thing, Nika, I can ask you a question and not like your answer. But my goal is what's the point of me asking you the damn question if I'm not going to listen to you?
There's room for people to give an answer. Oh my gosh, that is so powerful. Yes.
I mean, let them answer and don't immediately come back on them if you think they're wackadoo. I mean, how are we going to get changed? People are going to say the dumbest things. Go to a funeral and watch what people say to people when they're sitting there when their grandmama just died and they're walking, well, Jesus has a plan. I mean, some of the things people, that's not what they need to hear right now. People just say things. Oh my gosh, you'll get me fired up. So Lori, here's my answer. You need to make sure that you know that regardless of what people, they may be confused about what you say, just make sure you're not confused about what you're saying, number one. And the people in the room that are listening, if you invite somebody into it, if you're invited to eat at my table, you may not use your fork and knife the way I do. You may not drink the same way I do. You may not do those things. You may not be proper. You may put your elbows on the table, all kinds of stuff. My goal was to bring you to the table. My goal was to share a meal with you. And if I say that I care about you, I'm going to work through some of those things rather than just judge you're inappropriate, insensitive, or whatever else. Now, if you're straight out rude and ripping things off my table and throwing it, you got to go.
Yeah.
But when it comes to these things, we've got to learn. Don't tell me you want to talk and you don't, and then you tell me, you ask me a question, I answer it, and all you do is shame me or get on me.
Yeah.
And then also don't target your questions to corner people either. People are too busy asking questions to set people up instead of asking questions because they want the DEI story.
I love it.
I'm seeing it all the time, and I shut those down. I'm like, man, ask a better question. You know, you don't want to know, you want to catch them. I hope that helps, Lori.
Thanks for your question, Lori. So Sean's question is, has there ever been a point during your coaching that you came to a realization that the person might never move entirely into the mental space that originally was the goal, and you decide to try to just find common ground?
Well, yes. And I say common ground needs to be the thing that you always keep in mind, because remember, to me, the beauty and power, the way I learned from my mentor, John Maxwell, when I was in my 20s early. So I started my own business at the age of 24. I was self-employed at the age of 24. I am 50 now, and I've been self-employed since then. Okay. So common ground always needs to be where you start. So if you study, and I'm a big emotional intelligence person, I bring companies through emotional intelligence. But one of the things that you want to do, if you really want to get better in that space of social competency, which is about you understanding social awareness and relationship management, common ground needs to always be there. So if not, when you're coaching or working with people, what you're going to do is you're going to come with an agenda. And the beauty about coaching is the agenda is them. You want them to be the agenda. You want things to be open-ended enough where a person doesn't feel like they're restricted or they have to come up with the right answer. Remember, coaching is about problems to solve and not answers to remember. And we want to help people be able to explore those things. One of the most powerful, overlooked things is empathy, not sympathy, where I say you broke your arm and I send you cookies. It's empathy that says, I know you broke your arm. What's it like for you? What does it mean? You have to write with the other hand. Like, step into a different spot with that and really care about that person. So we can really demonstrate greater empathy, starting with, and always getting, when you go into a coaching session, always say, what's the common ground here? And even if you see that they're not willing to change their mind at that moment, make sure it's to see, right? Because we're not doctors that expect the bone to heal at a certain time. Everybody grows differently, and you need to leave room for a person to grow. You know, they develop differently. Developmental differences are always there. We forget that the mind has developmental differences. And we need to give people that time. And the whole heart. Remember, it's the head and the heart that get in sync, that can be worked with passion, that can lead to fulfillment. So we have to be there to give people that room. Now, if they're just obstinate and they're not doing the work, that's a different story. When a person's not doing the work, that's when you can say to them, well, if you want something different, you're going to have to do the work.
Right. You want something different.
I don't know if that was helpful.
Well, it was helpful for me, I know for certain. And I have lost visual to you. I'm not sure if everyone else has, but I still can hear you, Tim. But
okay.
I want to take these last 5 minutes just simply to, and this is how I like to end most of the sessions. There's so much we can continue to talk about and unpack, because you have left us with incredible nuggets that I'm sure are going to find its way into lots of future conversations, as we want to make sure we're sharing this information with others. But actually, there's 2 final questions. One is, what action do you personally feel called to in this moment? And then, what have I not asked you about that you wish to share and wish for this community to know?
Whew. If there's anything, I want people to know that my focus, and I'm not saying there are those that will go in the room and that you have to have like structures put out and all these things that need to be done and lots of papers put together and you have to train those things and put them out here. I'm the guy on the other side of that table sitting with the people going, now let me help you grab this, digest it so you can bring it into yourself, because until it becomes a part of somebody, until it's internalized, until they take hold of it, that's where companies need to do it. Don't just bring in people and throw them in a room and say, we just taught you unconscious bias.
Right.
Because you're talking at them. Here's my thing. In 6 months, I want to know who remembers what and what you're doing about it. And can you see any growth with people? And that's my world. I'm just going to let you guys know. I swim in the stream of what they do with it. That's my thing. So I learn all this so that I can break it down and help a person bring it into their world and show how it fits for them, how they can make it fit. I try to answer those questions. So that's the biggest thing that I want to throw out there for everyone to know what I'm so passionate about and what I do. And the other thing is, I'm going to share this with you. It's my little acronym of PRESS. So P is for problem awareness, R is for root cause, the E is empathy, S is strategy, and S is sacrifice. So what you have to do is, if you want to help people with a way to move through things, you press on it in order to press through it. And so you have to be aware of the problem, get people to understand, which goes to the condition. Then you have to get into the root cause of it, which goes to the condition. Then you move to the empathy. Now you're able to get into the concern and show you really care. And then that strategy and sacrifice. Now you as an individual or an organization can actually come up with, what am I going to do? What priorities am I going to establish to say, if we're here and this is where we need to go, what are the priorities that need to be established in order to get from here to there and make this true? And that's what we need. Those are the strategies we need to create. And there's no one size fits all. Now, there are going to be rudiments that are the same. So if I throw a brisket on the table right here and said, Nika, you and I are going to make brisket, you get one, I get one. And I said, let's make it however you want. She's going to use it's the same product, but she's going to season it different and do different things with it than me. And that's good. So we need foundational things, but we've got to get better with our strategies. But also, it's going to take time, and it is a sacrifice, and it's not going to move as fast as you want to, because how long did it take you to get it right? How long did it take me to get it right? And we're still trying to get it right. And so we have to realize that this is a long distance trip, and it needs world-class people that are willing to invest in themselves so that they can invest better into other people, that they can see a problem, look at the root cause of it, give some empathy into that, like real empathy, then get into a strategy that is not going to probably be what everyone's used to, but ultimately sacrifice. Be sacrificial and realize your sacrifice and the time it takes is not injurious, because the results are incredible. There you go.
I so appreciate you, Tim. Thank you so very much. This has been a gift to myself personally, a gift to this entire community, I'm sure. There are lots of great other remarks into the chat. So I hope that after today, you will take a moment to go back and review the chat just to see some of the affirming things that really were resonating with people within this community. But I always like to share that when people accept my invite to come and be a part of intentional conversations, I always feel valued, seen, and heard. And so thank you for giving me that gift. And I wish all of you a great weekend. Thank you for joining us. If you have enjoyed this session, then make sure you share this opportunity with someone else. And I look forward to seeing you again in future weeks. Thanks so much, Jim.
Thank you.